order for Wednesday, February 23rd. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is actually a joint meeting, but the Planning Commission meeting would be tonight, so we're going to take care of some of that business. We're going to, if you have your agenda, we'll do the roll call for each board, okay? I'll start with Christine to do the, for planning. How's that?
Deborah Addy,
Excuse absent.
Mark Borchardt,
Here.
Christopher Daggy,
Present.
Chris Eltunin,
Here.
Christine Holcomb here, Tom Kozel,
Here.
Robert Muesling,
Here.
Robert Jacobs,
Here.
Kathy Schweikart.
Here, thank you. Board of Trustees?
Here. Joanne Sherkey. Here. Mark Borchardt.
Here.
Chris O'Higgins.
Here.
Lori Lori. Here. Cindy Valentine.
Absent excuse.
Artie Grayson.
Here.
And ZBA, Bonnie McIntyre Slater.
Absent excuse.
Deborah Addy.
Absent excuse.
Glenn Szymanski.
Here.
Joanne Sherkey. Here. Bill Bosey.
Here.
Samantha Bynum.
Absent excuse.
Brian Treppa.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 4 is approval amendments to the agenda for planning.
Make a motion to approve the minutes,
This agenda.
over agenda. I did that last time, too.
Well, that's okay.
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Planning Commission dated February 23rd, 2022.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mark Borchardt,
Yes.
Christopher Daggy,
Yes.
Chris Eltunin,
Yes.
Christine Holcomb, yes, Tom Kozel,
Yes.
Robert Muesling,
Yes.
Bob Jacobs,
Yes.
and Kathy Schweikart.
Yes. Actually, Bob, you probably should.
Abstained?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
that was
Chris.
the.
That was just the
that's
agenda.
Oh, the agenda, I'm
The
sorry.
agenda.
I'm sorry.
So-
I was,
You're good on that one.
You're good.
The next one,
we have laid out, sorry.
That's okay.
All right,
I got
you guys fair one. All right, item number 5 is approval of minutes. This is the one I was referring to, sorry.
Sorry.
So the first one would be for the minutes for the joint meeting of February 27, 2019. So,
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 27th, 2019 meeting of the Planning Commission as presented.
Support.
any discussion? No,
Mark.
Mark.
Mark?
Did you say February 27th?
Yes, 2019.
Oh, 2019.
Okay, that's for the joint one.
Yes, correct.
That's a joint one, so we have to have everybody in on this one. So anybody else have any comments, discussions about the minutes from our February 27th, 2019, which was the joint board?
No notes,
Can I
pull out your
amend my
notes.
motion?
Yes. Did everybody get the minutes from that one? Okay. Go ahead. You're gonna have
I
to-
will, I need to amend my motion to, amend it to say approval of the minutes of the joint meeting of February 27, 2019.
Support.
Okay.
Yep.
Any discussion, comments? How about all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, passed. We're going to go on to item 5B, which is the minutes of the Planning Commission from January 26, 2022.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
So you're- Chris is doing double duty up here right now, so we'll give her just a second. Okay? Any discussion for the Planning Commission minutes? How about roll call?
Mark Borchardt?
Yes.
Christopher Daggy?
Yes.
Chris Hiltunen?
Yes.
Christine Holcomb, yes. Tom Kozel?
Yes.
Robert Muesling?
Yes.
Bob Jacobs?
I abstain.
Kathy Schweikart.
Yes, thank you. Item number 6 is unfinished business, which item 6A would be, I'm going to call it room to run as the short version. So I am going to, is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay. How about we start with Steve? Do you have anything you want to add to what you submitted to us?
Good evening, Commissioners. I undertook a third review of the site plan based on the recently submitted plans that they have several changes, and my letter to you highlights those changes in red. If I can go through some of them, just from the last one, if we go to number 12 on page 3, the site plan, screening had not been indicated on the site plan. The site plan now indicates vinyl slatting along a fence that will be used for screening purposes. So we had a number 15 that indicated that outdoor runs and grading areas shall be at concrete surfaces. The site plan now shows that it's hard surface. The issue that I was still concerned with is that it shows that all outdoor areas be at least 100 feet from the property line, and from our measurement, it's 50 feet. So if we approve this, we may have to ask for that adjustment, that outdoor run be shifted 50 feet from the property line.
Any other comments?
That's it.
We need to go to a public hearing on this.
This is a special land use. You have
Correct.
to hold a public hearing.
Any questions of Steve? Hearing none. Would the applicant like to add anything to this? You want to come forward and have anything more to say?
I sure appreciate your patience with us. It's been a while.
Could you just state your name, please?
Patricia Dooley.
Thank you.
The only thing I have to add is about that fence, that we're going to have to apply for a variance. If we shift it 50 feet, it takes away the whole yard. So there's no exercise yard left. It actually runs into the building if we shift it over 50 feet. The run is only 60 feet wide. So if we end up with 10, but we'll see if we get that variance or not. We have another option to move it to the whole other side, but that kind of causes a lot of problems. So that's the plan at the moment, is to apply for a variance
Okay,
for that fence. I don't know.
thank you. Any of the board members have any questions, comments?
So we can't approve that tonight then, right? No.
We have to set it for a
Yeah,
public
we gotta
hearing.
hit some,
And the public hearing, if we were to set it for, would be March 23rd, would be our next meeting.
okay.
Go ahead.
Would the variance have to come after the special land use, or would that be a condition of the special land use?
It would be your prerogative, where you wanted to handle it. You could make it subject to, or you could require it before. Doesn't matter.
I'm just trying to see what would make most sense to stop the applicant from having to come back and forth if that special,
Save them less time if they received the variance first. instead of
prior to
coming
the
back
special
later.
land use.
Sure,
Right.
but your zoning ordinance doesn't dictate either way.
So if we were to, we would have to essentially table it tonight for clarification, or for wait until we get approval of that variance, or?
Table it tonight or postpone action tonight until such time they obtain the variance, so they could come back for their public hearing, or hold the public hearing and deal with it. They would have to deal with it their own way.
Okay. Who do they go in front of for the variance?
Zoning Board of Appeals.
Those guys right there?
We're not gonna make our March meeting.
Correct.
Is that fencing existing currently?
There is fencing there.
Go both ways.
So what happens if you don't get the variance for the dog run?
Well, we either can't use that run, or we have to shift it over to the complete other side, which is an empty lot.
Now, would they have to redo the site plan if they did that, and then they would have to come back in front of us again?
Correct.
Okay, so it would make sense for them to apply for variance prior to us sending this to public hearing.
Easiest for them.
Okay, I'll motion that we postpone action on this item until the applicant provides us with a variance or an adjusted site plan.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion?
So you said that fence is already existing. How is that affected if it's already there?
It's up to the zoning board of appeals to make that determination, whether it affects their decision or not.
Okay.
Variance
And/or.
and/or site plan? Was that what your motion?
Yeah.
Chris needs a few minutes to go.
I mean, you could
You ready?
call it up tonight and say,
Any more discussion, questions? All right, roll call, please.
Mark Borchardt,
Yes.
Christopher Daggy,
Yes.
Chris Hiltunen,
Yes.
Christine Holcomb, yes. Tom Kozel,
yes.
Robert Muesling,
Yes.
Bob Jacobs.
Yes.
Kathy Schweikart.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Item number 7 is new business. Item 7A is reelection of secretary. So I will open nominations for secretary.
Madam Chair, I'd nominate Robert Muesling.
Anybody else? wanna
I'll second.
nominate? Any other nominations? No? Okay. Robert?
I'll accept the nomination.
Okay. All right. Ready? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Robert, you're it. You're it. Give Christine, give it to her. Item 7B is Planner's Annual Report. Steve? This was also contained in our packet.
Even though I wasn't here the entire year as your planning consultant, I did go back and review the minutes for you. And came up with this annual report of your activities last year. You actually met 9 times during the year. 2 meetings were on Zoom. The remainder of the meetings were live in person. You dealt with a number of issues, several site plans, some zoning, rezonings issues, and some ordinance amendments. It's all here written for you in chronological detail. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? This goes on to the Board of Trustees now,
Yeah,
correct?
you would make a recommendation to forward it to the Board of Trustees.
Okay, so we need a motion. Anybody want to make a motion?
Who has the copies of that? I don't
It
know.
was in our packet. Yeah.
I don't have it back.
Questions, discussion, motion, anything?
It's to send it to the board, is that what it is?
We have to send it to the board.
Okay, I'll make a motion to send the 2022 annual report, planner's report to the board.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
That's Chris.
Yes, Chris. Roll call, please.
Mark Borchardt,
Yes.
Christopher Daggy.
Steve.
because I wasn't here for the full time.
Chris Hiltunen,
Yes.
Christine Holcomb, yes. Tom Kozel,
Yes.
Robert Muesling,
Yes.
Bob Jacobs,
Abstain.
Kathy Schweikart.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for putting that together, appreciate it. Item number 8 is consultants report.
Just wanted to touch upon tonight that the recreation plan survey, I believe you each have received a copy of the link. It's
Yes.
a dummy survey, so to speak. Your responses are not being recorded right now. I wanted to ask if there are any glitches you found or any questions you'd like changed before it goes live, and I'd like to go live next Monday if we can.
No, once we got past the first glitch, it was great.
Yeah.
The first email didn't quite work.
The link?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once we got past that, mine went okay. Anybody else?
Went good after that.
I think there were 6 people that logged in, from what I could tell. So,
From what you could tell.
yeah.
No, I look good. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to get in there yet.
no.
Neither have I.
Did the other two boards get it, or just us?
That was forwarded just to you at first.
Just us, okay.
Because I wanted your okay on the
Sure.
questions, and
Anybody have any more comments, or?
How long does that survey run?
well, I want to run it for at least 3 weeks.
Okay, and then once all the information is brought back in, is that reviewed by you, or does the board get it? How?
You get it.
So we get it?
Absolutely.
What's it look like? I mean, in raw form, is it just
It's going to be
individual survey results?
No, it's going to be quantified.
Okay,
All the questions are going to be summarized percentage of each answer.
Okay.
And then you're also going to get a listing of all the verbal responses.
okay. Is it going out anywhere else other than just the online survey?
It'll go on your website.
Okay.
And we'll make copies available that you could put at the Township Department counters. And if you want, we can place it anywhere else.
Okay.
How do we put out to the community to go there and do it?
Pardon me?
How do we put out to the community to go out and take
That
the
was one of
survey?
my questions I was going to ask you.
Well, social
How do you
media.
want it? I know it'll go on the website. Are there any other
There's gotta be.
newsletters that you're aware of or libraries we can send it to?
Press release?
Yeah, we could do a full press release.
Yeah, we do a press release and, we have
Social
a
media
newsletter.
website.
I was going to
Okay.
say press release.
Press release?
Are those questions similar to what we've experienced in the past? Are they similar questions?
They're
or-
similar. There are a few expanded questions, but I wanted to keep a lot of them similar because I want to compare it to the responses you got 5 years ago.
That makes sense.
See if they see improvements or what, has changed.
Perfect.
Any
So
others?
when would it start?
I'd like it to start Monday,
Monday? And then it would run for 3 weeks?
3 weeks. Because
How
I want to be able to
soon
come back
would
to your
we
next board
notify
meeting.
the,
planning
when would the
commission meeting.
notification go to the public that it's available?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Is that for a press release, Cindy? Is that for the press release as well?
Right, correct.
Sounds
And we're
good.
free to post it online, right? On Facebook and stuff like that?
Oh, sure. Hopefully you do.
Next door, okay.
So that link that you sent us, that's the one that's going to go?
No, I'm going to get you
Okay.
another link.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to make sure before anybody shared that link that,
It's not going to work.
okay, so you're going to send that out to everybody?
I'm going to send it to Cindy and I have her
And she'll
send
get it to
to
us.
everybody.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and the board members and everybody,
Awesome.
and it'll be on the website. You really won't even have, you can just go to the township website and click it, where it
Grab it.
says begin survey.
Okay.
Right.
No additional questions to add to the survey? Any thoughts? Anybody?
Oh, look pretty good.
No.
All right, great,
I guess go for it.
thank you.
Thank you very much for putting that together. Appreciate it. And Cindy will take care of thank you. Appreciate that. All right, item number 9 is members' comments. And this is a joint meeting, so we're going to start with the Board of Trustees. It's supposed to be like an open air communication, hopefully. And we'll see where we go.
Okay, well, I perceive it to be a roundtable, discussion.
We can do, however you want to do it. Roundtable discussion, however you want to do it.
Yeah, I just open it up to anybody.
Yeah, well, it did say on our agenda, it just said Board of Trustees, so we just thought we'd start somewhere, so.
One thing I want to just touch on, with everybody actually here, we're all community leaders here. And, we have a lot of, projects going on in the township that you may or may not be aware of. One is we've been working on for a couple of years is repairing our sewer interceptor along M29. And also we're doing engineering on a water main project. And that also entails this along M29 from city limits of Algonac to the end of Willow Court, which is basically St. John's Marsh area, just before it. And that would be a water main replacement. And with that job, we're also doing the or bike path along the M29 corridor, and that would hook us from Elginak to St. John's Marsh. And also, along with that project, and the reason we're doing that is because there's going to be money available for infrastructure, but to get it funded and everything, it has to be shovel ready to go. So hopefully we'll be able to get some of this funded through grants and things that's coming up. We met as a board just this last week to set some loose priorities and talk about some projects, and one with high priority, we wanted to broadband extension in parts of the township that there is no broadband, mainly Marl Road, Starville, parts of Swartout, and McKinley. And we got a rough quote to have that done, and in about 2-3 weeks, we should have a hard quote to have that done. So, we also have the Hartson Valley Nature Park in play, and the County Beach Park in play that we're working on. And both of those, we're doing the engineering on it, and then we have to get DEQ permits before we can go forward with any of those. Let's see what else. We got a lot of road projects this year. On the island, we have Middle Channel being repaved. Golf course drive is actually being a reconstruction, and we got Middle Channel, parts of North Channel being repaved, and East Highway is being repaved, and Anchor Bay Drive is being repaved. A lot of the bids are gone out. Some of the bids have gone out now, and the others are on part of them, and part of them will be going out this next week for those jobs. And we have Phelps Road, the rest of Phelps Road being repaved. So that's quite a bit of road projects. We got some ditching projects along with that. I don't know if you heard, but we're going to Ira, Elginak, and Clay. We share the wastewater treatment plant, and it's been run by the county, and the county's not going to run it anymore. They want to get out of that business. So we're looking at. We have a meeting next week with the other entities, but really the only option is we're going to have to probably form an authority to manage that treatment plant for us. In other words, it would be made up with Elginak people, Ira people, and Clay, and the authority would have to look at different options on managing it going forward. And let's see, the bike path we talked about, and actually to finish the bike path to Ira for our part of the bridge to the bay. I brought it up today to them. They're going to look at it instead of continuing down the Dyke Road, which is really not a lot of room for bike paths along there. Is we utilize the old Detroit Urban Railroad, where there's a walking path behind St. John's Marsh. Utilize that. We have to do one bridge over a canal and raise some property up, but we can run that all the way to Perch Road old pole barn that was re-sided. It's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig. And it's in tough shape. And our police department, where it is now, is originally the water department, and it's really not designed for a police department. And there's building issues with that too. So we're looking at the possibility. We have property on the other side of the county, bowling alley. We're looking at the possibility of down the road at some time, building a public safety building that would house both police and fire and our dispatch center there. And it would be designed, correctly. They can share some resources, so it makes sense to do it that way. And logistically, we think it would be a good location. They have access on, well, 3 roads. There's Helene, Taft, and M29. But just want to make everyone aware of those things. And it's hard in our position too. And maybe the Planning Commission would like to, and the ZBA would like to help us out on prioritizing some of those things. A lot of it depends on funding, what's available, and the different types of funding. Like the parks, there's DNR grants and passport grants and other things, bike trails. There's also those grants and TAP grants and things through MDOT, and Steve knows all about those. There's different types of funding available for the sewer and the water mains and that type of a thing. But as far as that, that's where we're looking at right now is projects, from in the next year going out, 10 years, 15 years from now. And I did mention roads. That, unfortunately, is getting harder to fund. We're going to, as a board right now, we don't have a road tax in Clay Township. We're one of the very few townships in the whole county that there is no road tax. We fund it out of our general fund. And we've been lucky, and with a lot of hard work, we've been successful in getting grants for bridges and culverts, and we get matching grants with the county. That will still continue that part of it. But a lot of the state and federal grants are especially for bridges and large culverts, are drying up. So it's going to be, we're going to have to make some choices. It's going to be a lot more competitive. Like right now, we were lucky to do Merrill Street Bridge replacement, and that was about if I remember, I don't know, $700,000 job. It cost, after all our grants, we got it done to the township for $3,000 at our cost. The Flamingo Bridge, that was more expensive. It was a $1.5 million bridge, and with state, federal, and county, it ended up costing the township about $30,000. The state and the federal grants, they put in new stipulations on a lot of these, mostly traffic. To qualify for a lot of this money, you have to show where you have 10,000 cars a day crossing. We don't have that in the township, let alone. And, right now, we have the bridge to Bluebill. It's got to be addressed in the next 5 years. We have just got a report a couple days ago, the bridge that goes over the Mayberry Cut, Harson's Island, that needs to be addressed. We have a culverts, large culverts, and a culvert is a crossing less than 20 feet. So, I mean, you think it's a bridge, but it's called a culvert. But the one that goes over Riverside Drive down by Sasson Marine, that's going to have to be addressed. pretty hard on our general fund. You know, the township gets .51 something mills a year for our general operating. And it comes out to be about $265,000 a year that we generate from property tax for our general fund in the township. So doesn't take long to do the math. So like I say, we're gonna have some tough choices as far as those. And in future road projects, I know we're gonna have to look at Fruit Road and Falter Road, you know, in the next few years, and that type of thing, so. But I think what we should do too, we have some ordinances that I personally feel we need to look at. I think the ZBA can give you more feedback on that. Our auxiliary building, especially 2 acres and more, needs to be tuned up. And I don't know about boathouses. We have a ordinance now where you can build a enclosed boathouse on a canal. And I think that's gonna bite us in the butt here. Sometime the first person that puts a boathouse on Flamingo or down by Sassy that's enclosed, people are they're gonna freak out over that. I know there's a couple people that live on Flamingo there and are shaking their head. I mean, people will flip out over that. My own personal thought was when we first looked at the boathouse ordinance, if I have a house on the water and I got a canal on the side of it, and towards the back behind my house, or if I could build a pole barn back there, why couldn't I build an enclosed boathouse right next to it on the water? But that's not how the ordinance got written. And then I'm sure the ZBA, we've had a lot of variances coming to the ZBA about boathouses. Trying to think what else. And it's funny too. I just had a phone call this past week. I get them every day, but on our auxiliary building, the guy has 3.5 acres. He lives on the water. He's building a beautiful house. He's got a garage and a boathouse, and he wants to put a shed up so he can put store his lawn furniture in it. The way the code's being interpreted right now, can't do it. You can only have 2. The boathouse and the garage are 2 auxiliary buildings, and he can't have a third. And so my standard reply is, well, you got to go to the ZBA and get a variance. And he goes, well, okay, I want a shed to put my lawn furniture in. Is that a practical difficulty? And is it self-created? And I don't know. So I think that might need to be looked at, or how other communities do that.
Is Gary here from the building department?
He is not,
No, he's not. He had 15 inspections today, or,
he had more than that today.
yeah, he's very pressed, so.
Because anybody can jump here anytime.
Right,
We just started out with we had to start somewhere.
Right, well, I thought I'd start you out.
You got us started. Good, thank you. But I was just curious, Gary was here because Gary seems to be the person, Cindy, from the building department, everybody goes through, so.
Gary has been working with Steve on some
Right, and
ordinance amendments, so.
okay, and I see there's a couple hands going up, so go right ahead, jump in.
Well, right now, the ordinance states that you are allowed 2 accessory buildings, and the total of the 2 accessory buildings cannot exceed the square footage of the house. So if you have a 1,900 square foot house, you can have 1,899 square feet of accessory buildings, but only up to 2. Right, only up to 2. And it doesn't matter if it's, well, right now it says 2 acres still accessory buildings, is still at 2. The square footage changes if you go over 2 acres.
If you go over 2.
Right.
You can build over the square footage on over 2 acres, but not any more than 2 accessory buildings.
Well, this is 3.5 acres, but still only 2 buildings.
No, I know, we had one at 6 acres just a few weeks ago. Similar issue. I think, I thought that we already, on our joint meeting in 2019, that we did cover all the stuff with the boathouses.
I thought we did too, but,
It's like fences, it doesn't go away.
like fences don't go away either. How about Brian? I mean, do you have anything to add to?
Well, we were just talking about boathouses on that joint meeting. It wasn't voted on and the ordinance wasn't changed at that time. You guys were just changing it after that meeting. None of the decisions that we made during that or already really spoke for me. I couldn't speak at that meeting for some reason. I was sick, but we do need to address certain boathouse issues. There's going to be some problems with that. We've come a long way, but again, I don't know, it could be looked at differently too.
Are you willing to give Steve some input since you guys are the ones?
Yeah, because I mean, we have a lot coming on at Colony. Colony Drive is humongous. Boathouses, you know. Anchor Bay's slowing down a little bit because they're pretty built up, but Colony seems to be, it doesn't matter how big, they'll buy it and tear it down and build a bigger one. It just seems like that one is every other month. We didn't have one last month, so, but Colony seems to be pushing pretty hard on boathouses. And the Evo, I mean, they're pushing, they're maxing it out. They're definitely going big.
What's the variance they're seeking?
Height, I know.
Usage?
Yeah, I mean, storage. Usually it's the height.
Yeah.
You know, the 15 feet is not feasible on some of those houses, or, you know, boathouses.
Most boats are higher than 15 feet.
It's not even just that, it's just the design of it, you know.
Right,
trying to
water
get
comes
some-
up, the height's not.
And it replicates, it's not, that's the biggest thing, is it's not been contrary to the people in that area. You know, everybody, you know, seems to want to do the same thing for some. But speaking of fences that never go away, I was thinking, because the determination of what you consider a front yard and a backyard when you live on the water needs to be addressed. Yes,
We've been trying to address that.
I know, but it really needs to be handed out.
What's your thoughts on
The
that?
road is the front.
Then I would
Say it
just
again?
suggest,
The road is the front.
In this
that's
township, it was
Fortunately, but everyone that lives on the water.
But also, it
the
was
front
also
yard is
said
the water.
wherever your mailbox is. So, you know, have everybody put their mailbox out front. I'm serious. I mean, that's just, because it's not fair.
You're probably not aware of it, but we spent a lot of time with Gilfils and Webster because they surveyed the other communities in the area. What's on waterfront? What is your front yard? What is your backyard? Because we know Clay Township considers your front yard, waterfront or not, is where your mail gets delivered. Other communities, surrounding communities, do not consider that. Waterfront property is deemed differently. Your front yard is South Channel, North Channel, whatever, you know?
Right.
So.
It makes a difference on what the front and back is. according to
Yes.
the fence.
Yep.
It absolutely
Right,
does.
That's what we're getting.
But
at.
not a ton, because in our ordinance, it does, I mean, there's unobstructed yard space in the rear yard. So I think what a lot of the residents were looking for, I don't want to say a lot, but the residents that were coming in and wanted adjustments to fences, they didn't want fences, no matter where, if you could call it front yard, backyard, side yard, you could call it any name you wanted, they didn't want fences. The ordinance isn't really broken the way it's written now, because there is an unobstructed yard space in the rear yard. I mean, and that's, again, and then, you know, you get into the semantics of, well, waterfront is only waterfront if it's on the river, it's not if it's on a canal, but it is on a bay if it's not, you know, so there's a lot of things that played into it when Planning Commission was looking at it, and ultimately it went to the board and sort of just got dropped because there were so many other things that were involved in that. I don't know what other recommendations, you know, other people might have with that, but.
Well,
You haven't had a fence one in a while, though.
But you could spell it out, just like that. You could have waterfront, bay, river, lake, then you could have another one and change it versus on a canal. And it splits it like we were talking the other night about 3 canals, you know, which is your front, side, and rear, you know, and address each individual thing, so you're not missing anything, or anybody, you know?
Didn't we do that? I
Our
thought we did that.
previous building inspector used to make that call, because as a building official, he can make that call, as far as allowing for a fence, and how all of these fences that are out there currently work is that, again, the building official has that right and that power to make that determination, to have that. So that's why a lot of those fences were permitted and allowed, and now are not. So it's up to us, us as ZBA for current, but you to make that clarification and get this hammered out.
Well, what fences are you,
It's not gonna go away, and it's just gonna escalate to be even a more, and you're gonna have people that are just gonna forget permitting, and they're just gonna do it and take you to court.
what fences are you referring to that are not permitted?
Like from going down, Point Trumbull right here.
Yep.
From the road to the back of their garage. Because that is considered their front yard.
Right.
So they could have a fence there.
No.
Why couldn't they have a fence there?
Yeah.
Because that's because their front yard, from how we all believe it, because we live in the lakes, or on waterfronts, is the river. What's back here is our backyard, but ours is our front yard, but the city, or we call it our backyard, but the city calls it, the township calls it your front yard. So, and it's double-edged sword, because you're not allowed to go build a garage in your backyard, which is, the riverside.
Well,
That's what I mean, it's just, you really need to iron this out.
Didn't we change it to where,
Well, there is a different couple.
so as long as you meet all the setbacks, you can have a fence on both sides,
Correct.
but you can't have, if you are on the water, I think the only stipulation that we really had in there, you can't have chain link on both sides.
Yeah, but it's not, they don't want it in the front. They want it from the back of their garage, which is usually the first thing when you're driving off the road, of Payne Trevor, is you get your garage, and then you walk into your house, and then you walk into the river.
But I think,
They want a fence
isn't it,
from the road to the garage.
but I think, isn't it, if they meet all the setbacks, I think they can have a fence as long as it's not chain link.
Yeah, they can do that.
No, that was turned down. We just had two of them, just, 2 months ago. Did we not?
I don't think it is.
The privacy fence.
I'm sorry, Cindy, I couldn't hear you.
It has to be a decorative fence in the front yard.
It has to be a decorative fence.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance, you have to read the ordinance.
Yeah, but it's, again, privacy fence, there's.
They wanted privacy fence. in the
So
Right.
you're saying it came to the ZBA.
Well, they want a privacy
They wanted
fence.
full privacy
They
fence
want
in the front yard.
privacy fences, you can't have
And that was turned down.
Well, that was between a commercial property and a residential property.
No, there's others though, but.
But that's, if it's on the roadside,
It's classified as front yard and back.
if it's on the roadside though, and you're, especially if you're not, I mean, if you put privacy fence on the roadside of a structure, you're creating a lot of issues with visibility. So that, I mean, is,
You still have your normal setbacks of your sight line when you're pulling out of your driveway. We're talking, I guess you just really need to figure out the front yard, backyard thing, and that would kind of solve all these other little issues.
See, I don't think it would, because I would disagree. I think the ordinance, the way that it's written, whether you consider front yard the river or
Right.
the road, the way the ordinance is written, you're still permitted to have a fence in front yard or backyard. It just has to meet the requirements of the fence. A front yard can have a fence, it's just decorative fence. So you could call the river the front yard, but now you have to meet the requirements of the decorative fence in the front yard, and you have to meet the unobstructed yard. It's still permitted.
There's a lot of people on the water that don't want fences.
That's
on
the people that
water.
come in here don't want fences on the water. They don't care about the fence in
Front
the,
or backyard, they don't want it, period.
yeah, they just want the water side to be called front yard because they assume that if it's a front yard, no fences are allowed. But the fences are still allowed there. That's the issue we ran into the last time we addressed this, is the residents that were here didn't want fences at all. There was no question of the fence. So they thought that if you could call it the front yard, and that's the premise that they were riding on, let's call it the front yard, and then there's no fences allowed. But there are fences allowed. They just have to meet a different requirement. So I don't think that the front yard, backyard is that big of a deal. It's just what you're allowing in those
Since you guys
areas.
changed that ordinance, we haven't had any fences besides that one set yard between the commercial and residential.
And I think we had talked about that. I don't know if Steve was in there, if it was the last, if it was Giffords that we had talked about addressing the commercial part of it.
And I don't think, okay, which one, because the last one we sent the funds to the Board of Trustees, it didn't get any further.
Between, you know, I don't wanna say, you know, Motor City Madness and a residential company, you know, they had Mowing Madness, sorry. And they just put a nice privacy fence between the two so they didn't have to see the trucks. That was
The
it.
headlights.
Yeah, but, I mean, they started early, you know, and they
Right.
sometimes when they're plowing, but it worked out in that instant. But just saying that was, again, between commercial. We haven't had any fences on Flamingo, Cardinal, none of that. I mean, obviously, you know, the building inspector's handling all that, because we're not seeing any of that variance like we used to see it before you guys rewrote or redid something. So I don't see a fence being that much of an issue besides, you know, no one's gonna be happy. It doesn't matter.
Well,
Not everybody's gonna be
No
happy.
one's ever happy about fences. No.
That's just gonna be you know, just the same thing as a boathouse on Flamingo or Cardinal or anywhere. People
But-
that have boathouses love them.
Right.
We are a boathouse. but-
Well, I talked to Gary on February 17th, and I was hoping he would be here, but he's not, so that's fine. And the comments he had were in regards to, well, first of all, I thought we had to go back and rework all our zoning book again, and I'm like, I think we just did that, but if you have, between Steve or anybody else on any one of these boards, something in particular you want us to look at, because it's not a short process by any means. I
We
mean,
had that typo on the last one, I hope that got addressed. That's, you know, a big one, I don't know.
we haven't seen anything at this level yet.
Well, that's not a typo. I have a 2002
It's-
code.
And I don't think it's a
It's not a typo. It's not a typo.
Basically, you know, it's stated one way
It is,
in
yeah.
one ordinance, and it's stated another way on another ordinance.
Apparently,
We have
that's
to
been
fix
going on
that.
for a lot of years.
I'll have to get you the numbers on it, but we have to fix that. And in our meeting, you know, we won't allow the second to, you know, take over. No one's gonna get us on a glitch, but we still need to correct that. Is that?
Like I said, they are working on it.
Who's they?
Steve-
I'm gonna ask Steve, because
Yeah, Kathy talked to Gary about that.
I talked to Gary, I talked to Steve, but us sitting up here as a planning commission have not, I mean, there was accessory building question, height exception, outdoor storage, which I think we've already addressed that, but, you know, things keep changing, moving, so, but we sitting up here as this board don't have any information on any of that, and I reached out to Gary in the building department, like I said, on February 17th, I reached out to Steve. I know those two communicate amongst themselves, so,
I don't think there's anything that had to come in front of you. I think it was just more of a typo or like a misprint in a sense.
I think it still has to come in front of,
Still has-
Reclarification.
but unfortunately, it still has to come in front of us. We can't, we have to hold, go ahead, jump in anytime, public hearing and the whole,
I am working on ordinance changes with Gary.
Okay.
There's a lot of changes, some of which have been discussed here, others which haven't been, that are discussed here that I wasn't aware of. So I made notes of, but any change, any language, any ordinance, whether it's a simple typo, yeah, if there's a letter out of place or something, but anything that changes a phrase or
we have to go to,
a meaning has got to come back.
it has to come back
So
with the,
you will definitely have to see that then. I mean,
I'm sorry again?
you will see that
Yes.
correction.
Right, and I'm not even sure if it's a typo, because
It's not a typo, it's more, it's
Yes.
contradicting each other.
so, and I know people say one way or the other, because I heard a lot about this quote typo thing, but no matter what we do with any ordinance, we have to follow the procedures, which can take us a little bit longer than,
Steve, which ones are you
What?
working on now?
Height exceptions,
For everything or
I
just
think
both?
for mostly accessory buildings.
Yeah,
And then accessory structures.
yeah.
I think that's it right now.
Shipping containers.
Which was the other one?
Shipping containers.
Oh, yeah.
I thought we did shipping containers, and I talked to,
There's a contradiction.
Here's, yeah.
hold on a
Okay.
second.
I thought we were done with
I
that.
know, because
Yeah,
I
I
talked to
found-
Gary
found a glitch in it.
specifically about shipping containers, because we talked about
Yes, we
shipping.
did.
Boy, we
There's
talked
some
a lot.
minor revisions that he wants on there that he suggested. They're
But
not
he
major.
seemed more concerned, and I don't want to talk for Gary, that's why I wish he was here, concerned about how do you enforce it. And I'm asking this because I didn't get a chance to talk to you, because now he is perceiving, and again, I don't want to speak for him, he's perceiving the problem of, okay, we did all the shipping container, and this board spent a lot of time on it, well, what am I supposed to do with this ordinance now? I'm like, okay, what do you mean?
Well, we're talks about getting a permit now for a shipping container. And it also, the proposed revisions is going to ask you guys to put some kind of language in there that anybody that had a shipping container prior to August 2020, which it must have been when you adopted a shipping container ordinance, that at least they register those so he's aware. I mean,
That's
those are the
something we
things.
was talking about.
Yeah, and then anything after that that might have been constructed without a permit is in violation and needs to come in for a permit. These are the things he wants me to look at.
Which is what we talked about, but I'm like, I'm not sure we up here can do much until he tells, somehow give us some language, whether it's through you or him directly, which I expressed to Gary when I
I
spoke
think
with
the
him.
intent is to come back to you guys next month
Okay.
with at least a preview or draft changes.
Okay. What was the other one? Storage containers. Outdoor storage in general in residential areas, I thought we kind of addressed that also. Is there
Or
something?
shipping containers and that kind of thing.
That's just what he's
Temporary
referring to?
Temporary storage, yeah. Mostly shipping containers.
Well, also the non-permanent structures, the tents, were an issue.
Okay. That didn't come up with me and him, but I will talk to him about it.
The cover canopy.
The cover canopies, the tent rental, that was,
So what's the problem with those? They're not
you
permitted?
can, they're supposed to be only for 1 year, and people have been.
I think it's 6 months or something, right?
So,
So do they come to you then for that, or just in general?
That's a,
just
Minimum 10 feet.
right, we talked about that. It's right up there with shipping containers as far as a problem.
Temporary.
they get those garage in a box.
Yeah.
Correct.
How about from the ZBA's perspective, there's other concerns? Go ahead, say it. That's what we're here for.
No, after we have opened up the dialogue, I mean, it'll change. If we see more than 3 coming in front of us for some reason, I'll send you an email, or, we'll say, hey, we just got another boathouse for a certain height. If we have 3 in a row, I'm gonna send you something and say, hey, can we just look at it? If it's the same variance.
Okay.
If it's a height, if it's a, I don't know, not for a side yard, not any setback differences, but, something that you maybe could change.
Okay.
One thing that's changed with Eagle and boathouses, which just happened this past year, how they're interpreting for their permits. You cannot have a enclosed boathouse more than 900 square foot unless they do a bottom conveyance, in which that means they have to buy the bottom lands from the state. And I don't know, as the board remember, we get them like once a year, a bottom conveyance that we have to approve that, they're gonna do that, for this or that. We're going to probably see more of those, that will come before us for, like I say, any boathouse now that's enclosed over 900 square feet. They're going to require a bottom conveyance. And unfortunately, the homeowner would have to buy the bottom lands from, the DNR, and, it could run up north of $5,000 or so to do that. So that's a new caveat as far as with Eagle, as far as with boathouses.
But that's only if you're going over water versus.
Right,
over land.
over water, not over land. So,
Is that for inland canals or just
anything.
anywhere?
Yeah, if you cut in, you see, well, it's no problem. But if you're going out over the water, 900 square foot's the magic number now. And that nothing's changed in their laws, they're changing how they interpret it. I met with them, and that's the new interpretation.
So I wonder why they chose 900 square feet and not a distance away from the high water mark.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter about height. It's
Square footage, yeah.
It's area.
It's another way to tack around.
Yeah, exactly. I call it extortion, but,
That's what it sounds like. It's probably like a 26-foot boat, and that's it after that, yeah.
well, yeah, it's, yes, that's what it is, so. Yep.
I should ask Steve, there's another one that Gary talked about, something about small cell, second part, minor text amendment. Do you know what he's talking about?
Small cell tower?
Small cell towers?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are boxes that they put up on poles.
But we need some amendments or some text to language.
My understanding of the law is the local governments can't regulate those anymore anyways, within the right of way.
So that's something we don't have to worry about.
I don't believe so, but I'm researching that for you. And I'm talking, I'm gonna be, with permission, I was gonna contact Artie, see if I could contact the attorney.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Got that taken care of.
I know as far as permitting, we're very limited as township enforcement. I know, depending on what they're doing, they have to get an electrical permit from us, depending on what they're doing. But other than that, we don't have much juice there
Okay.
on cell towers in general.
I'm just going through the list of when Gary and I talked on the different things. How about something about rezoning county park property?
Yeah, where the beach is.
Do we need a new park zoning or existing one
Well,
we can use?
they got two different lots, or more than one. And half of it's zoned one way, half of it's zoned the other. And they would, the county would like it to be all zoned one way. I mean, it could be zoned R1, it could be zoned, Steve could.
I see Cindy raising her hand back there.
Yeah, so they've got multiple parcels, so they're gonna combine, the question is combine parcels first and then rezone it
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something we get to look forward to.
down the road.
Okay. Then something about the land division ordinance 128 township ordinance per engineer is outdated. Our township engineer is outdated. Anybody familiar with that concept? I see Cindy raising her hand
Yeah,
again.
when I started in 2016, I was told by the township engineer.
And who's that?
PCE, Project Control
Okay.
Engineering, that we should take a look at our land ordinance and update it. So that's been on the back burner since 2016.
That is an engineering ordinance. Typically, planning commissions don't deal with those.
Okay.
Those are dealt with exclusively by the township board, although they can refer it to you.
Okay. They don't have to, they can keep.
It's typically an engineering and township board
Okay.
determination.
So that's something the township
It's a
board,
regulatory, more of a police ordinance as compared to a zoning type ordinance.
so unless we hear something different, that's kind of in the township board's hands. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like it's gotta go through them first, and
Yeah.
then they'll make a decision.
Does that make sense already, and anybody else on the township board? Yeah, I'm kind of looking, I see Chris going yes, so,
Hey, Steve, is there anything new? I know the state legislators looking at updating the medical marijuana and everything. Is there anything that we have to address along those lines?
The state is looking to reduce the number of plants that a caregiver can have to two, one for themselves, one for their patients. If that's the case, yeah, we'll have to make changes to our zoning ordinance. But I would wait until they decide what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
There's
Can
also,
we have our ordinances basically, we conform to whatever the state ordinance is?
yeah, we can certainly do that.
You know what I mean? So we can be proactive and not
Sure.
wait on it.
Yeah.
People in Lansing told me it's probably gonna happen quicker than.
Yeah, they've got a lot of complaints from communities.
Yeah, they're looking at reducing the number of plants from 12 to 2.
so then everything that's in effect that already has more than 12, is that going to
Yeah,
affect
because
them?
they're licensed, so the state won't license them.
They won't license them that way.
Laura.
Okay.
They're also looking at, as you guys are aware, short-term rentals, taking some control away from local communities, and mining, which may not affect us much here. But those are the other two that are discussed right now.
Couple minds.
So anything for, as far as marijuana in this community, if that goes through, they're gonna have to adhere to their licensing through Lara, right?
Yes,
Okay. And is everybody in this community licensed through Lara as far as?
supposed to be.
They're supposed to be. And if they're not,
The state police should be
Okay.
contacted.
Now, that's for caregivers, right?
That is for caregivers I'm talking about.
Not personal.
No, we don't, I mean, the legislation's being changed for caregivers. The Facilities Act for medical and recreational is still up to the local communities whether to allow it or not.
anybody else have any?
Can I ask about the survey, because I didn't know what was going on with that. The survey that Cindy's gonna post tomorrow, what's that all about?
Oh, sure. We're undertaking a new recreation plan. It's due every 5 years. You have to prepare a master plan, master recreation plan in order to obtain grants for recreation purposes from the state of Michigan. So they give you a list of all these things we have to answer. Part of that is that you have to hold 2 forms of public input. One being a public hearing, and the other is our choice. Well, the best one that gets the best response typically has been a survey of, do you use the park? What are your favorite amenities in the park? What would you like to see added to our recreation programming, those kind of things. So those questions will be online, and that's a requirement. Hopefully we'll get a couple hundred responses. That would be great.
So is this to improve our Clay Township Park, or is it for new parks, or?
It's for all parks in Clay Township. And what that does then is the planning commission in setting the action goals of the plan should listen to what the survey says.
Steve, I forgot to ask, you were gonna do a presentation for the
Yeah, I have a
boards?
short presentation on roles that I was asked to put on.
Why don't you go for that, and that way people have any questions afterwards, we can go with that, how's that?
That'll be on the township website for people to do the survey?
Yes.
Bring me the lights down.
Oh, were you putting it on? Yeah, you cut that side off. Leave this side on.
You were supposed to bring it.
Where's my blanket?
I don't know where to stand so nobody can get blocked here. No matter where I stand, I'm gonna block somebody, so I'll try and go over here.
We can move, you guys want, anybody wants to move, we can move anywhere we want.
As long as you guys can see, you're good? All right. All right, this, I presented to both the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. A lot of you have been at this presentation, but this is just excerpts from both of those presentations. And it deals more, I was asked to kind of give a summary of what the roles and responsibilities by state law are of the different boards, the Township Board, the Planning Commission, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's what I really kind of want to run down with this. It's not a very long presentation, but it just kind of talks about some of the things that we are allowed to do. Now, the Bible of planning in the state of Michigan is basically 2 acts. It's the Michigan Planning Enabling Act that was redone in 2008, and the Zoning Enabling Act that was done in 2006. And we are all creatures of the state. Communities are creatures of the state, and you're only allowed to do what the state of Michigan basically tells us we can do. So what these enabling legislations have done over the year is it allows local communities to plan and zone. Okay. And it talks about what, in doing that, you can and cannot do. It is very specific. Each of these acts are maybe 20 pages. If you don't have them, you probably all should have one. Bring them with you, because it really gives you an understanding of the roles of each of the groups, the timetables that we have to post things, the notification requirements for the public. All these things are in there. But okay. So let me just kind of summarize quickly what the Planning Enabling Act says. Okay, that basically lays out the responsibilities of the Planning Commission. It talks about their terms, who can be members of the commission, ex-official members, a member of the ZBA, a member of the Township Board. It says that. It gets into specifics by saying a member of the Township Board that serves in the Planning Commission can't be a chairperson. All these things. Who's eligible to serve in the Planning Commission? It talks about a wide range of people representing various groups and locations throughout the township and the different backgrounds and everything like that. That should be on. It talks about what a conflict of interest is in terms of removal of a planning commissioner that violates that conflict of interest. It talks about the requirement of bylaws. So the Planning Commission have bylaws. It requires 4 meetings per year, minimum. Most communities around here are busy enough to have more than 4. Talks about, it gives you the right to compensate the planning commissioners. And it allows the Planning Commission, the Township Board, to hire staff to undertake planning and zoning, to hire consultants like myself to assist, or to seek outside counsel in terms of planning and zoning. These are all spelled out on the procedural things, particularly related to the Planning Commission, the planning aspects. It also talks about, the other half of it, talks about the master plan. Now, the master plan is an ultimate plan that's adopted by the Planning Commission typically, that talks about what the township's going to be like in the future, how you anticipate it to grow, how you anticipate the various lands to be developed as. It's kind of a blueprint of the future. And it says that you're required to have a master plan if you're going to have a zoning. If your community zones, and every community in Southeast Michigan does, you're required to have a master plan. And it spells that. And it tells you what components have to be in the master plan. It tells you about how you go about adopting a master plan. How many days before a public hearing can take place. It talks about sharing your master plan with surrounding communities. It talks about sharing your master plan with the county, to the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, SEMCOG. And all these things. And then it requires you to do a couple other things. It requires you to talk about the relationship of your future land use plan, your master plan, and zoning. So it bridges that gap. So you have this big, giant master plan, which is your goals and your ideals of what you want your community to look at. And your zoning ordinance is your tool to implement it. So if you say you want this part of the township to be residential, your zoning ordinance should have certain zoning districts for that part of the township, whether it be single family, multiple family, duplex, whatever that might be. So it talks about how do you establish those relationships. It allows for the review of the master plan, or requires a review of the master plan every 5 years. Now, you don't have to complete a new master plan every 5 years, but the Planning Commission at least has to look at it within every 5 years and say either, well, I think what we have is good, and it can continue, and they certify it again for another few years, 5 years, whatever they want. Or they ask for a total revision, or they ask for some amendments. In most cases, the planning commissions that I've worked with have asked for some amendments, but not many. Several communities are now starting to redo their master plans completely because the 2020 census just came out, so it's a good reason to update it and go. A lot of communities held off for the last few years until the census came in. But those are some of the things you can look at. Or, some major changes. You weren't aware. I work for the town of Romeo, Village of Romeo, and they want to change their master plan because Ford Motor Company, the Ford Romeo engine plant, may be leaving. So that's one of the things that they're looking at in their next master plan. So that's a big change from the previous master plan. So they're opening it up again and looking at updating. So Then if we go to the Zoning Enabling Act, that's what talks about the Zoning Board of Appeals. Talks about the membership of the Zoning Board of Appeals, how many members you can have, what are the responsibilities of the Zoning Board of Appeals, what kind of variances they look at, what kind of interpretations they can make. It talks about alternates. Strangely enough, the Zoning Board of Appeals, as many of us know, can have alternates, but a planning commission can't. I don't know where that came from, but those are the rules that they provided that we all have to abide by. It talks about another really quirky thing is that action on the Zoning Board of Appeals has to be a majority of the membership. So if there's 7 members on the Zoning Board of Appeals and only 5 of them are there that evening, 4 of them have to vote in favor to grant that variance because that's 4 out of 7, the majority of the membership. As opposed to the Planning Commission's decisions, if 5 of them out of the 9 were here, only a majority of those that are here have to vote. Again, I don't know the logic or the reasoning, but that's what our legislators determined was appropriate. It talks about real heavy into citizen participation, which is important to planning process. Talks about how you hold a public hearing, how many days you have to give notice. It talks about notifications within 300 feet of the property if you're given rezoning, if somebody comes in and requests a rezoning. Those are all minimums. You can go above that. I have some communities that notify 500 feet away. But at a minimum, it's 300 feet from a property to notify in case of rezoning. Now, it allows, like the planning enabling legislation allowed for the creation of a master plan, the zoning enabling legislation talks about the adoption and creation of a zoning ordinance. Now, all of us have had zoning ordinances for quite a while, so what we're doing now is basically amending zoning ordinances, the changes that we talked about tonight, heights of structures, accessory structures, those kind of things. Those all follow under amendments, and those are all required to have a public hearing, newspaper notice. They're recommended, they go before the Planning Commission. It's recommended to the Township Board who acts to implement or enact the ordinance. So it specifies that. It gives you all the scenarios and what you need to do. The last enabling legislation, the one that was took in 2008 or 6, zoning, allowed for things like special land uses. Many of us are aware of what a special land use is, but those of you in the audience and those that are new, special land use is a use that may be allowed in a zoning district, but not all the time. And the example that I often say, and I know I've told these guys that before, is that a church or a place of worship is typically allowed in a residential district. But if you lived in a subdivision, you wouldn't want it in the middle of your subdivision. So what the special land use was created for, it allows a certain use in a district, but subject to additional considerations. Compatibility in the area, not creating a nuisance. And what it does is it allows the Planning Commission and Township Board, if they chose to approve special land uses, to approve it subject to conditions. Now, that's opposed to a site plan. Somebody comes in for a site plan, and it's zoned commercial, and they want to put in a fast food restaurant or something, and they meet the ordinance. The Planning Commission and the Township Board, if they approve it, don't have any discretion on those things. If it meets the ordinance, you got to approve it. Okay? But a special land use, on the other hand, you can add some conditions. For example, most communities will things like the church. Go back to the church example. You can put a church, place of worship in a residential district. However, it has to be on a major thoroughfare. Kind of makes sense. Those kind of conditions. Some communities have fast food restaurants. You can have fast food restaurants on a main thoroughfare, but it has to be at least 350, 400 feet from a residential district. Why? Because of the sound that's sometimes transmitted. So those are conditions but that was the first time that the state allowed communities to pretty much have some discretionary powers of uses that are allowed in zoning districts. There are also other things that we don't deal with a lot, but our plan unit developments, which are large-scale developments that are given flexibility These are usually some natural resource sensitive areas where somebody might not be able to meet the lot sizes because of the wetlands going there, the tree preservation or whatever. So they come in for a planned unit development, and it allows some flexibility and density in moving things around. Just recently, not too long under this, the state allowed conditional rezonings. And if I give an example of what could happen before that, somebody could come in here and say, I want a office zoning or a commercial zoning, let's say, and I'm going to put in an office. And I got this picture. Isn't this beautiful? It's a beautiful facility. Look, it's all going to be brick. I'm going to put, 300 feet of landscaping, and I'm going to do all this stuff. And the township says, great, we grant you that rezoning to commercial. And the people go out the door and change their mind and sell the property. Well, now there's commercial property there that anybody can come in and put, let's say, an auto parts store or anything else that might be allowed in that district, which caused a lot of communities problems, especially when residents would come to public hearings and say, I want to know what's going in, or I'm not, I don't like this, and you can't tell them. The planning commission can't say, well, you're allowed, if we grant this, it can be any of these uses. And some of them might be good, and other ones you say, So what the state did is they allowed conditional rezonings. And a conditional rezoning is, and the developer has to offer, it specifically says that a community can't request it, but a developer has to offer to rezone their property on a condition. And that condition is predicated on a specific use. Okay? So they would come in and say, I want to rezone my property. Here's the bank I want to put there. Here's the office building I'm going to put there. This is what I'm going to build. And then what happens if the Planning Commission and the Township Board decide to grant that conditional rezoning? A legal agreement is drawn up that says that they can only build that particular use, that utilizing that particular site plan, and if they don't build it within a certain amount of time, whether it be 18 months or 2 years, the property would revert back to the previous zoning. So it's another great tool that a community can use to kind of dictate some of their development trends. These are some of the things that have been coming in. We talked briefly before. The state enabling legislation also exempts certain uses from the community, from reviewing. And here they are. These are the ones primarily to date. Manufactured housing, mobile home parks, agriculture, adult foster care homes, group care homes, daycare centers, schools, wetlands, mineral resources, landfills, hazardous waste facilities, gun clubs, prisons, oil and gas wells, telecommunication equipment, we talked about, and they're talking about mining and short-term rentals. Now, you can probably see on this list, you'd say, I don't want that by my house. That could be, that's why the state took it away from local units of government, because then in their minds, we wouldn't have any of these things. So they were afraid that the local units of government were going to zone these out. So they said, okay, we're just going to take your control away from you, and they're going to do it. So they grant the permits. That's why over the years that I've been a planner, I get a number of complaints about the house that just opened next to me has a group home in it. What can I do? Why did you allow that? And we would say, sorry, it's allowed by the state. Or, we don't want that motor or manufactured housing community next to us. Sorry, that's been allowed by the state. These are some of the things that the state has taken away from local control, and it's in, again, the Zoning Enabling Act. So let's just talk briefly and wrap it up by the different roles and responsibilities, all dictated by the Enabling Acts, the two Enabling Acts. Now, the Township Board has the power to make the appointments. Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and a number of other groups is the responsibility of the Planning Commission. Also says that the recommendation to the appointments to the Planning Commission and the ZBA has to come from the chief elected official. Township Board can vote that down, but they can't appoint somebody else in the place. The supervisor in this case would have to re-recommend somebody that would, until he would get a concurrence of who could be appointed. That's in the ordinance. That's the enabling legislation. The township board is responsible for ordinances. So in that effect, they're responsible for ordinance adoption. Okay? That's why rezonings are part of the zoning ordinance amendments and that's an ordinance. So that has to be approved by the township board and the planning commission can make a recommendation. Okay. Zoning reviews, rezonings, same thing. Their master plan. Now, the State Planning Enabling Act says that the Planning Commission is responsible for approving the master plan. Okay. But it also says that Township Board can also have input. Okay. So the Township Board can assert their right to also approve it. And where the catch is, and I've seen this happen, where the Township Board has been feuding with the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission, not here, don't get me wrong, I mean, the Planning Commission has this master plan drawn up that the Township Board does not necessarily agree. But the State Enabling Act says that before the Planning Commission can adopt it, they have to send it to the Township Board to have it sent out for review. So what the hammer is for the Township Board, they can just refuse to send it out for review, therefore it dies. But most communities work together. The Planning Commission usually recommends a master plan to the Township Board. Even if there's some necessary revisions, or there's some changes that are forthcoming, they'll send it out to the public for a 63-day review period. And then it comes back. Planning Commission would listen to the changes or requests for changes, listen to the public, make a recommendation to the town, or approve it, and then send it to the Township Board for also their adoption. That's the ideal situation. So the Township Board is in this process, in planning process, deals with appointments, ordinance adoption, planning land use ordinances and other ordinances, rezonings, and the master plan optional. Now, in the planning process, as I had indicated, the Planning Commission basically handles the master plan process and adopts the master plan. They listen to the input from the public and make recommendations and develop this master plan. My understanding is the township's master plan was just adopted about a year ago, so it's up to date right now. The Planning Commission's role on a zoning ordinance is to listen to the concerns of the citizens, to listen to the concerns of the administration and the Zoning Board of Appeals, and make recommendations and start to review the zoning ordinance to see what changes should be made. It was very appropriately said before that if there's a lot of variances being requested from the Zoning Board of Appeals on a particular item, then they should notify the Planning Commission that these are some of the issues that they are dealing with. I do have a community in St. Clair County, but I'm not going to recommend it. They adopted a solar farm or solar ordinance, and their limit on these solar panels is 6 feet. They've had 4 ZBA cases since adopting it about 8 months ago that thought the height of it, they've all come in for a height variance. Means that height is wrong, okay? Unfortunately, we're having some consternation from the Planning Commission because they don't think it's wrong, but the public reality is this must be wrong because they can't meet that. So those are the kind of things. So the Planning Commission deals with the ordinance amendments, works with the planners, the staff, to develop these ordinance amendments, and then recommends, after public hearing, they hold the public hearing, recommends to the Township Board the adoption, because again, it's an ordinance, and only a Township Board can adopt an ordinance. Site plan review is pretty much no man's land for under the enabling legislation. A site plan review is what I said. Somebody would submit drawings that show how they're developing their property. If it's in compliance with the ordinance, you should adopt it. You should approve it. Okay. So there's really not a lot of discretion. So communities all differ on this. Many communities, especially the larger ones, site plan review is all handled administratively by the staff. Okay? Because we think about it. Either meets the ordinance or it doesn't. Many smaller communities, site plan reviews are handled by the Planning Commission, which is here. Other communities decide that site plan review should be handled by both the Planning Commission and the Township Board. And I've seen that done. In fact, worked many years in Clinton Township, now over 100,000 people, and they still have their site plans reviewed by the township board. Subdivision plat review, we don't see a lot of subdivisions anymore. They all go under the Condominium Act for reasons of timing and that. But subdivision review is all part of the Planning Commission. They can review and approve that. The Planning Commission can also review and approve special land uses if it's allowed by the ordinance, or the Township Board can also assert their right to do that. So some of the things that these guys are doing as opposed to others. So, but there is some flexibility, especially site plan review and special land use review. Now, the Zoning Board of Appeals is like the judicial body. You know, I remember our old government classes where you had the legislative branch and the executive branch and the judicial branch. Well, the legislative branch is obviously the Township Board. The executive branch is the Planning Commission because they're the administrators. And then you got the judicial branch, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, they're allowed to do three different things by the Zoning Enabling Act. They're allowed to hear variances. Variances like I want to build, I know your ordinance says that my house has to be 10 feet from the property line, but I want to build it 6 feet from the property line. That's a dimensional variance. And they're allowed to grant that based on a certain set of criteria. There's a number of criteria. It has to be, there has to be a hardship. What's the reason? Other than I want it. And that hardship can't be economic. So what might, on that side yard setback, be something? Let's say they had a pie-shaped lot, and they were 10 foot on the front, but as it angled back, it got down to 7 feet. Okay, there's a unique hardship there. There's a reason why it might not fit. So those are the types of variances they would give in dimensional variances. There are also other things that are not often used, but they are at times. Appeal of decisions. Okay. The Planning Commission in Lenox Township, not too far from here, recently denied a wetland mitigation bank for a developer. And what a wetland mitigation bank is that they come in and they build a wetland and they sell the rights to that wetland to other people who want, other developers in other parts of the county that want to destroy wetlands but are required to replace their wetlands somewhere else, usually in a 2-to-1 ratio. The Planning Commission denied that request based on they thought there were too many of these areas within the township. The applicant, who will probably end up suing, has to what they do called appeal, exhaust their administrative rights. So they appealed to the Zoning Board of Appeals to overturn the Planning Commission's decision. Legally within their jurisdiction, they can do that. The Zoning Board of Appeals in this case did not overturn the decision. Those are some of the things that the Zoning Board of Appeals can do. And lastly, it's interpretations. Interpretations of the ordinance. You heard tonight that there's some vagueness in a lot of ordinances, what they meant by that or what they meant by this. There's a situation in Ira Township on what a attached structure is. It there was somebody that had a sunroom next to their house, and they wanted to determine it was part of the principal dwelling for land area purposes. Well, the building inspector ruled that it had its own set of footings. It was more like a sun enclosure, and that was his interpretation. And he said, well, it didn't need to meet the setback requirements. I think that's going to end up going to the Zoning Board of Appeals to make the determination whether the building department inspector was correct. So these are the kind of things that the law allows you to do, and they're all specified. So again, it's really not rocket science planning in that. If you follow the rules and regulations, when you don't is when some communities get in a little bit of trouble and maybe get you could get sued, or you could have some conflicts of interest issues, and you may end up losing in court for some of these things. But if you follow the enabling legislation rules, it's pretty much a no-brainer. I think that might be it. Any questions? Perfect. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Grab the lights.
Hey, Steve. On the conditions of rezoning, you referenced going from commercial to residential. What about the opposite of that, residential to commercial? Or commercial to, commercial to residential?
Can you do that? I don't understand I
Yeah,
understand what you're
I
saying.
probably repeated it, but going from commercial to a residential,
Right.
is that possible?
Oh, sure, of course.
It's the same process.
Yeah,
That's
you
what I'm
can,
getting
yeah,
at.
everything's the same, no matter what zoning, whether you're down zone or up zone, it's all the same
I
process.
just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
like
go
how
ahead,
you
yeah.
said, Bob, as far as like the ZBA, as far as our perception of particular ordinances. And just so you guys can study on this, on the question of the height variances, it's 1803 paragraph 2, which actually pertains to buildings over 2.5 stories or 30 feet. And then what was adopted some 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was 3.25 in 2002, and it got moved in 2006 to 3.24, is for height exceptions, and it mainly pertains to structures that are 15 feet means heights. And that's where the so-called typo is. It's not being fully read. If you read on 1803.1, and you read that line, and then you read number 2, then it will make sense when you're reading 3.24. So it was not ever a typo. It was never a misunderstanding. It's just that it's how it's perceived. So this isn't a building over 2.5 stories. It's a 1-story building with a 15-foot means heights. And that's what the difference is, because on 1803, if you're over 30 feet tall, 2.5 stories, you move over 2 feet, you gain 1 foot. Well, that's where they put the 3.24, is that you're at a building that's 15-foot means heights, that you go 1 for 1 off the sideline. And that is how the ordinance is written. It's not a typo. So you all read it in full, and then read this again. And that's why it's there, it's why it's been there. I mean, I have the book, only the farthest one I could find is 2002, and it's written the same exact way.
So you say it's been there since 2002?
Yes, and longer.
That's something you and Gary have been,
We will now.
okay.
It's not a contradiction. It says 2.5 stories. That's again, you have to read it to understand it.
Interpretation.
Yes, and that's exactly right, interpretation.
So you're
As it
saying
gets
maybe our
taller, the
past
building
buildings?
is smaller.
The bill, it says 18.03.
That makes sense.
States 2.5 stories and 30 feet. That's a whole difference. I mean, leave the building part to us.
Okay, so at this point, maybe you have that explanation.
And we'll work with
Conjunction
Gary.
Gary.
Absolutely.
At
And
least
we'll,
it's one viewpoint. I mean,
we'll make contact if I have any questions. I'll get in touch with you.
You all have ordinance books?
yes. Not with me, but yes.
Right, yes, so
My first reaction is ordinance should be easy to read and easy to understand, or even by anybody. And if that's complicating to people like yourself who have experience in reading these, then something needs to be changed.
I don't have a problem how it's read. That's why I'm kind of defending it, or trying to explain it so everybody can understand it.
Okay.
Not just reading one line of one thing and one line
Yeah.
of another, not reading the whole chapter.
Okay.
He's saying maybe it can be reworded so it all flows better.
Yeah, definitely. It needs to all be one section or it all.
Yeah, that sounds like a problem.
Well, I appreciate your input. I'm sure
Yeah.
we all do.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody?
Did you mention about height too? We talked about the meeting, our staff transportation authority, we wanted to give an update on that.
Well, we were supposed to have a meeting this Saturday, but one of the members has a death in the family, so it's being postponed until March 5th. Next Saturday, not this Saturday, the following Saturday, at the Lions Hall.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or input? Steve, thank you again for presentation, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, can I ask one question too about bylaws, or not bylaws, but the voting? Where you said it had to be the majority of the whole seven, you know, 5 or 2, the 2, but in our, how it's read in the, on our bylaws, it says the members that are at the meeting, the people that attended it, so we have to have a quorum of 5, even though we have 2 alternates, so we always will have a quorum of 5. So it says that it is the majority of the, who's, basically as who's present. It wouldn't be a 4-to-1, it'd be a 3-to-2.
Yeah.
Right.
And
But
if
he
there's
said
only 3
4-to-1.
people, if there's 3 people at the meeting, all 3 have to vote for.
Right,
For.
but he said 4-to-1, that's why I was.
I was saying, if you had 5 members, okay, or 7 members,
7 members, they need 4.
and only
Well,
5
right,
showed,
right.
and only 5 showed, you still need 4.
Right.
The act is really specific. The planning commission needs a vote of the majority of the members present. And the zoning board of appeals needs a majority of the number of members on it.
Right, that's what, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
what you said.
sorry if I
You have 5, so no matter what.
Right, yeah,
no matter what, even if you have 3.
right.
Anybody else have any time to say anything else? And hopefully, if anybody, I mean, we all have each other's emails. Don't hesitate to reach out, even amongst our boards, if you have questions. Steve loves to answer questions for us. So, something like,
French fry at McDonald's.
All I see is like flashes. It's like, yeah.
something like that. So, well, that was item number 9 on our agenda, was any comments from any boards. And if anybody on any board in the future, if you think this would be beneficial to do it again in 6 months or whatever, please,
Always.
anybody can initiate an email. I just reached out to Stephen, he had a date like today that was available, so, I mean, again, I appreciate it. Saw our township attorney, and she seems to be working well with Steve, because you guys have a lot to
I've
go.
known Christine for a long time.
Yeah, so have I, so she's a good person, so, well, if nothing else at this particular point, I'll move on to item number 10, which is public comments from anybody in.
Welcome to Robert Jacobs.
Oh, I was gonna get down to mine eventually, but we can still say, yes, welcome board, Robert Jacobs.
Thanks for serving.
Yeah, so, item number 10 is public comments. I'm not gonna reread the, items for public comments. I'm sure everybody's pretty well aware of them at this point, but if anybody has a comment from the public, please come to the podium, state your name.
I have a very brief public comment today. First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. Awesome. Very enlightening.
I think he knows.
And
Do you know who he is? Would you please give your
Oh,
name,
sorry,
our
Jimmy
secretary?
Newman, 7650 South Channel Drive. How I gotta get my, I had 2 comments. One of them is that's, I guess, just a suggestion. When you were talking about the fence issue and the language being kind of confusing between front yard and backyard, if maybe you just considered adopting the language as roadside yard and waterside yard, or yard opposite of roadside, it would probably simplify it for what you guys are trying to do, which is define it well for the public, because the public sees it 2 different ways. Like Dennis said, some people see their waterside as their front yard, which you could just call that the yard opposite of the roadside. So for the fencing purposes. And then a quick question for you was the roles and responsibility presentation. You had said that the setting ordinances was the responsibility of the township, right? Is the board also responsible for the enforcement of of ordinances, or is that put on a different group?
ahead.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely, go ahead.
That's the responsibility of the staff, the administrative staff. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Any other public comments?
You can stay there.
I was gonna say, do you want it to stay right there? By the,
You stand in the,
you sure?
I got here, so.
Be careful.
Diane Miller, 7311 B Lane. There was supposed to have been a meeting this morning or sometime today with the St. Clair County Road Commission. I know I already mentioned a whole lot of things about road commission projects. What's going on with our culverts back there in the,
Well, that's not a large culvert, those aren't. I actually talked to our local road guy about them. And I said, now that the water's down, and once the snow melts, I wanna see them. And, he swears that they're there, and if that's the case, we're gonna have to clean them out.
tell them to drop Diane there and see if it
Well,
flows
that's
through.
what-
It won't flow through.
That's what I'm telling you, we're gonna clean them out. So once he kinda thinks they got buried over the years, and they're in there, they just gotta be cleaned out and exposed again. So that's another thing, you know, and, I don't have the date yet, but we're gonna do a drive around with them, and that's probably the first thing on the agenda for that day.
Well, I've been there for 25 years, so I went through the extreme low water levels to where at my seawall, I had land in my,
Yep.
canal bed.
Well, we're gonna make sure.
And so I know there's no culverts there. Anyway, you didn't mention anything about that, so I wanted to bring that up. Also, I'm greatly concerned about this water issue. I think it was glossed over a little while ago when you brought it up, with the wastewater treatment plant, where St. Clair County has bailed out on us and does no longer want to maintain it for us, for Algonac. I am no expert in this whatsoever, but, according to that letter that they wrote when you guys had this meeting on the 17th, of which there's no recording that I can find, there was no agenda posted, nothing about it, happened at 3:30 in the afternoon, where you retained counsel for this issue. It's obviously a big deal.
No, wait.
And, excuse me, it says in there that they have had numerous discussions and meetings and other communications about that Algonac wastewater treatment plant with Algonac, Ira, and Clay. And they say that the reason why they will no longer maintain, and this is in their letter that you've got in the agenda packet there, is because we have failed, us, Ira, Algonac, have failed to include the mitigation plan that was agreed upon in order to fix this issue. So now, we all have to maintain this water treatment plant without the assistance of the county? What the heck is going on? Algonac, obviously there's been issues because we went 2 years past the date of the filters that needed to be replaced. They're supposed to be replaced after 5 years.
Are you talking about the water plant or the wastewater treatment plant?
Both.
They're two different ones.
Both.
Okay.
Both. They're both issues.
The wastewater treatment plant, and Chris is.
Yeah, can I speak to it a little bit?
Yeah.
So Diane, my name's Chris Hilton, and I run 2 separate water treatment facilities. So this is my wheelhouse. This is what I do. So.
Oh, good. I'm glad we have somebody.
To just speak on the water treatment plant, so the concern that you had about the filters and being past due, that statement isn't actually, that's not a true statement. So those filters have a life expectancy. The manufacturer expects them to last at least, and every filters are different. So they say they expect them to last 7 years. If you get more than 7 years out of them, and those filters go through a test every single day. So the treatment plant knows if those filters are operating efficiently. The filters at the Algonac Water Treatment Plant are operating efficiently. They still are. What they did is they said, okay, we need to replace these filters because we have exceeded the life expectancy that we thought we could get out of them. We know they're still working properly. All of our numbers are fine. All of our tests are fine. So they've actually extended the life of those filters, saved the township and the city some money by getting more life from them. So they've actually gone over and above what it looks. So your statement about saying that they are failed filters is completely false. They're not. They are operating efficiently. I know those folks well.
Real-time monitoring.
Yeah.
The documentation that I read said that they had a 5-year life expectancy.
So what the documentation?
And then 2 years passed that date, and then all of a sudden.
Right. So your interpretation,
Already
Diane, your
had
interpretation of that
fund.
was that they've exceeded their life expectancy, they're garbage. When in actuality, they got 2 more years out of those $480,000 filters, so they went over and above and actually exceeded expectations. So it's all about interpretation. And we just talked about interpretation earlier. You interpret that as being, well, they failed us and they didn't do what they were supposed to. When in all honestly, they actually overachieved. They did better than what they were supposed to. So they actually did a great job by extended life and saving the citizens money. So
Okay, so let me ask you this then.
Sure.
Why did we have to come up with money to replace these filters? Why isn't that built in as part of a maintenance requirement? You know that they have a life expectancy of 5 years.
sure.
is
So
what I
I'll
read.
speak to that too because
So why wasn't there funding already available? Why did we have to approve extra funding?
So I'll speak, and I'll already speak on it too. Every community knows that their filters need to be replaced. So money has been set aside. Algonac probably came to Clay Township and said, hey, this is the year that we need the money for the filters. So it's the township's responsibility at that point to say, okay, we do have the money, so we're going to approve to spend the money at this time to replace those filters.
So we don't pay that monthly or quarterly in our water bill for
No,
maintenance of the facility?
your water fees are brought in, and those fees are used to maintain the system. You didn't send another check to the city or to the township, did you, for replacement?
No, of course not. But what I'm getting at is that they're supposed to be maintaining
Which they are.
the water system.
They are.
We pay them to provide that service to us.
So were you asked for any extra money? That's what I'm not understanding. Did they ask you for extra money?
From what I heard from the meeting, already had to approve out of our budget where the Clay Township had to pay that. So
Right.
that means it wasn't based
So
on every resident.
so Clay Township has accumulated the money from your water bills, and that's in a fund. And then now it's time to pay a bill to replace filters. They paid that bill. They didn't come and ask Diane Miller for extra money to pay for the filters, did
We
they?
have a capital expense
So that
fund
yeah
for the water plant.
so that was responsible budgeting.
$150,000 to $200,000 a year in that fund.
Okay.
And it builds up. And instead, if we didn't budget for it, and there's other things, there's air compressors we fix, there's generators, there's screens,
Pumps.
intake
We had new
screens,
pumps not long
a
ago.
roof up for the building, there's all kinds of expenses. And we budget this money, we have a 20-year capital improvement plan for the plant. We budget this money and put it in a fund. Otherwise, it would be like, okay, we're going along good, we have zero expense or very little, holy cow, we gotta buy $500,000 in filters. It smooths out, the fund smooths out the budget process. And it's all budgeted for. So yeah, we had to approve the expense
Okay.
to
All right.
pay out of that fund that we have set aside.
All right, I
That's
just wanted to
budgeted.
understand. So
Okay.
now with the wastewater treatment plant, why isn't St. Clair County willing to continue? According to that letter, it sounds like us, Ira, and Algonac all dropped the ball and didn't put in the mitigation plan what was agreed upon.
So can I speak to that too, Diane, for a minute? Because I am also involved in that.
Contaminants are outrageous.
Well, so you're far-reaching here on a couple items. So the county has decided that they no longer want to be in the business of operating a wastewater treatment plant.
That's not how that letter reads.
That's exactly how it reads. I've got a copy of the letter. It was ours.
I've read it 3 or 4 times to understand it. It was in the packet.
Well, you didn't understand it then.
Okay, can I stop for 1 second? We don't know what packet you're talking about because it was not in our
planning didn't
package
get
from
that.
tonight. So it must have been he has more insight than any of us apparently. So was it in the township
Well,
board's
I
packet?
had planned on being here on Monday because the calendar never gets updated, so the calendar said there was supposed to be a meeting on Monday. Has nothing on this meeting tonight.
Presently, the road commission actually operates our wastewater treatment plant. The road commission wants to.
stated on the letter that you brought.
The letter said DPW.
The road commission,
It's under the
DPW.
road commission. They want to be out of the DPW business. It's not only our wastewater treatment plant, they manage a couple of lagoons in the county, 2 or 3 other lagoons, don't they, Chris?
Yep.
And they're washing their hands of all of them, just not our wastewater treatment plant. And that was a letter stating to us that we're going to basically get out of the business. So I met with our board about, well, the only other way, reasonable way to manage it with Ira, Elginak, and Clay, and we're gonna have a meeting next week on it, to talk about it, is probably to form an authority. And I wanted legal counsel to represent Clay in forming that authority, because this authority is gonna be, it's gonna be like a 50, 70, 99-year deal that we're gonna put together for this authority. I want legal opinions and guidance for my board on behalf of Clay to make sure it's done for the best for our citizens for the next.
Well, I'll read the letter again, but the way the letter was written, it said that Elginak, Clay, and Ira failed to include what was verbally agreed upon for a mitigation plan, and therefore they didn't want the liability of the plant, and they gave us until August to take it over. Now, that doesn't sound like somebody who wants to get out of the business. I'm sorry. It sounds like somebody screwed up, somebody didn't do what they agreed to do, and now we're
We have a
getting dumped
mitigation,
on us.
Clay Township has a mitigation plan. Does Ira have a mitigation plan?
Yes, we do.
Are you from Ira?
Yes, I am. I work at Ira Township Water Plant. I do not live in Ira Township. I live on Flamingo.
Okay.
But I am very familiar with water and wastewater. That's my wheelhouse. Anytime you want to reach out and ask questions, I'm more than willing to help you out.
Okay, and the last thing that I'd like to address is, since apparently emailing in public comments when you're disabled or ill and can't attend a meeting wasn't accepted very well when I did it, so I'd like to know, what is the procedure when someone is unable to attend a meeting to have public comments? Their public comments read.
You can email the board.
I did.
Okay, and that's your.
And you said it was inappropriate.
No, public comments is public comments to the board. It's not public comments to the public. That's the difference.
Oh, really?
So-
Well, when the planning commission does public comments for other things and
To
people
them.
email in, they're read. They're read into the record.
It's an option.
They're read into the record. Yeah, well, so if I want my public comments to be read into the record and documented, I have to show up. That's what you're saying?
Board of Trustees meetings are for conducting township business.
Yeah.
It's for conducting, so if you want to give your opinion or your ideas to the township board, you can come to the board meeting and comment, you can email the whole board, and it's for the board to, the trustees to make their decision.
I think that's an interpretation.
I'm sorry, but if someone is unable to attend a meeting and they have public comments that they want to have read
To the board.
into the document, into the record, they should be allowed to email them. I emailed them to each and every board member. I didn't know the protocol. I even emailed it to Cindy because I didn't know who coordinated it.
And every
And then
board
at the
member
very
got it.
next meeting, after it was done, you gave Maureen a hard time because she read it and said it was inappropriate for her to read my comments. So how is it supposed to be done?
Because your comments was already communicated to the Board of Trustees.
I want the whole public to hear my comments.
That's my point. the public comments is public comments to the Board of Trustees. It's not a soapbox for you to say anything you want to the whole public. There's other forums for that. It's
Well, then I think you need to change the name from public comments then, because public comments are public comments. That means
To the board.
you make comments to the public.
I think that's an interpretation, and that's why I read it, because a lot of times if one citizen is feeling some way, other citizens might not have thought of that, and it's something that everybody should hear, because if other people feel the same way, then they can also voice their support. So, I mean, Artie, you're saying it's a public comment just to the board? I don't, that my interpretation is a public comment is it's for all of the public. So-
Why do we have public comments? It's to educate the board. Or
And
is
that to educate the board, the whole community can watch these
Okay.
meetings. If they
Are
bring
they
up
the
some-
decision makers? The
Yes, they should be. We will
public.
work with
Yes, you
Right,
work
we
for us,
represent
and
the
that
people.
means that
We
if the public
represent
hears
people.
things from the public
Trustees.
comments, then they want the.
Okay, hold on one
they
second.
want to come
Hold on,
in.
everybody hold on one
Right,
second.
I agree.
Oh, hold on, just one second. I'm just observing what's going on.
Yep.
I would say the difficulty we have, probably not just her, but the whole community, is I realize you say it's public comments and it's going to your board, but the members sitting out in this audience, whether it's the ZBA, whether it's planning, whether it's your board, we as citizens sitting out there don't know what has been said. That's why I've taken the approach. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. They can't be here for, they're sick, whatever. I end up reading it. I'm not sure there's any legitimate reason one way or the other. Maybe Steve knows better because he deals with a lot of communities. But I think that's what they're trying to convey to you is that,
Oh, I understand it.
that they're looking to see that versus watching you as a board sitting up there and we have no input or feedback from you because we don't know what's in your packet. If we go on the website, we don't know what's in your packet. It doesn't
The
appear.
packets are on the website.
But you wouldn't have put her public comments.
No, the public comments, no, I know they're on the website, but
And her email is in the packet.
I did not see it, and I know there's been some issues with the website, because I went on to look for our agenda for tonight, and there was nothing. And I had a few people go look, and we had nothing. And it did eventually get on there, but I can see the frustration from our public looking towards us as, whether it's elected officials, whether it's appointed officials. I just feel that it's just maybe a small step. You don't have to read maybe every single letter. I mean, in the past, when we had big projects going on, I'd say, okay, I'm gonna pick this one letter. There's all these other people who have written in on the same viewpoint of we're in favor of this project, not in favor of it, but this particular one covers everything. It's just a suggestion. It might make it easier. It might make it more friendly atmosphere for the whole community. It's just a thought.
If you look at the aging demographics of Clay Township, we're getting older and older and older.
Thank goodness.
People are gonna get hurt. People are gonna get sick. That doesn't mean that we quit being a resident here and that we don't want our voices heard.
Okay, Diane, I'm sorry. Your public comment was read and received.
Well, but like my question right now is the fact that you said that was inappropriate. I wanna know what the proper method is to have public comments done.
Here is where we've lost, we never print these public comment rules, but a public comment is a public comment. It's not a Q&A session. It says it should go on for 3 minutes for a person or 6 minutes for a spokesperson. You know, you've been speaking and being answered for probably 20 to 25 minutes. I don't know.
Okay, and other
So
people
this is a
have stood here for an hour.
We end up with no order to our public comments because, in my opinion, it's out of control. Your comment is to us, it's noted when you make the comment, and then we move on to the next comment.
So if I
But
want
if you
all
have
the
questions,
residents to be
we're
able
here
to.
every single day. You can email, you can call, you have everybody's, you can call Maureen, she's always willing to take a phone call.
Well, and Artie was, somebody came in and said our meetings might go live and you might be able to type right in something that might be a little bit interactive. So stay tuned for that. That's gonna be,
I can see our
Next.
meetings live and that they can watch them.
Yeah, but
It's-
that's
it's
only
not
if you have
question and
Comcast.
answer.
there might be a chat thing there with you can.
That's only if you have Comcast though, right? It's gonna be like on Channel 6, like other communities have?
No, I think it's through the website.
I'm sorry?
Depends on the format, it depends on where it's posted. There's
lots of options available to us.
We're an exploratory
stage. Yeah, he's working on the sound.
It might be on the website, you might be able to go on the website and watch it live, but stay tuned for that. Thank you.
Okay, it's very frustrating to have to come here in order for the public to be able to hear my public comments like this.
So on this public thing that we're gonna be doing, are you gonna have the happy face emojis, the?
Facebook Live, yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Just clarification.
We can get it free if it comes with ads.
Any other public comments? Come to the, there you go. Sure. Please state your name.
Pathfinder, Middletown.
Thank you.
They mentioned at the last board meeting that the comments are before the meeting. I find it very difficult to comment before the meeting when you have not heard the meeting and what has been brought up and what opinions are stated. It doesn't make sense. If you're there to take our questions, but we can't ask questions if we haven't heard what you have to say. So I know other people do it this way, other people do it that way. I'm just saying that from my point of view, it just doesn't make sense. I cannot ask questions to the board if I haven't heard what they have to say.
We have it in the beginning of the meeting because it is beneficial for the board to get the information from the public before we make the decision. It doesn't do any good for your public comments after the decision's made.
This does.
Why? Because
The decision's
So
already been made.
actually, you're making the decision and you really don't care how we feel.
no, that's why it's the opposite.
I don't see that. How do you?
That's why we want your input before we make the decision, as opposed to after the decision.
Give your opinions in the beginning, so when it comes up to a vote, we've already heard the public's opinion. That will help us in our vote. If you vote first and then you have the comments at the end,
Doesn't do any good.
you didn't have a chance to be heard. Then you would be saying, I couldn't be heard. See what I'm saying?
I was there 6 or 7 years reading minutes, and in the past.
Okay, hold on.
Let me make a suggestion. Let me make a suggestion to solve this little issue. Okay? Here's a suggestion. Read your agenda. If you see an item on the agenda prior to the meeting, please ask a question for any one of us, okay? And then you can make your public comment concerning the agenda on that particular item. Now we have information to make a sound judgment when we do attach that, make that agenda item. Simple.
I never get the agenda, or I do not go online and get the agenda prior to the.
Okay, well, then that's something that you really need to do, okay?
Any other further public comments? Sure.
This is short.
Okay, please state your name again. Watch where you walk.
I just have a couple questions, real quick ones. Your name? My name is, I'm kidding. My name is Sue Gertz, Middle Channel, Harson's Island. I have two questions and I don't know how this all works, but the board, the zoning board, there's a huge building at the corner of Ames and Middle Channel. How was that ever zoned okay?
Well, it's by the setbacks, again, that rule of the, so many feet off the property line, this was that way, it's allowed. I mean, he owns, he's 10, 20 feet off the property line on one side. Basically, it gives him, he can go as high as he wants in the second story.
He owns that whole section.
Yeah, and.
So I
And
just,
going further off the setback, he's allowed to go higher.
And
okay.
then the upstairs is under 7 foot, which by law, state, anything under 7 foot or less is not habitable, considered habitable space, is considered storage space.
I didn't
So that's
understand.
how that was opinion.
I didn't understand, thank you. And then I also have a question for Artie. He mentioned that they're going to repave parts of the road. Does that mean they're going to do a lot more than they did the last time when it was absolutely ineffective in helping any of our roads? On Harson's Island. When it was the South Channel was done and parts of the Middle Channel, and it was, I mean, you know, it was done about 5-6 years ago, and it was absolutely useless. So when you say repaving the roads, is it going to be a better job
Well, I hope so. The last time it was poor because the tar was bleeding up through the chip seal.
But I mean, was that an issue of not spending enough to get it done better? Or, I mean, that's why I'm worried about what's going to be done this summer.
Well, it's a road commission job, and the middle channel is going to be a new chip seal put on it. And it's going to be thicker, heavier than what's there now. I really don't know how to answer your question.
Yeah, well, so is that decided by the road commission, or does the township have?
That's a primary, it's called a primary road, and it's 100% on the road commission.
Did they decide the last time that it was done? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other?
It's a lot with them cameras. I know. You know where to put it.
Dan Newman, Middle Channel Drive.
I'm sorry, Sue, can you say it again for Sue, please? Thank you.
All set.
Sue, are you okay?
I just had a question for Chris, and it's just something that I noticed at the house, being that you're in the water, dealing with the water. On Middle Channel, 4460, yesterday, we had the family over and you're noticing that the water coming out was,
Cloudy?
something's wrong.
Not my water treatment, not my facility, but
I know it's not yours, but maybe you could contact.
was it cloudy?
Mary.
So put it in a clear glass of water and let it just sit there for a little while. There's a lot of air in the water right now, a lot of dissolved oxygen.
that's all it is,
That's all it is. Put it in a clear glass, let it go. If it doesn't, call me and I'll talk to some people.
Okay.
It's probably just air. A lot of air in the water right now.
Okay, that's
So that's probably what it is.
$50 on a new filter.
Did you just put it in?
No,
Bef-
no.
After it was acting up, we just put it in today.
No, we saw the water, and I went
Yeah.
down the filter, I thought something was wrong.
Your tap water, your water quality is great. There's a lot of air in the water right now. So if that don't fix it, let me know.
Hey, Art, remember you said that there was 4 water main breaks, would that have any effect?
No,
Not out there.
Oh.
I get air in my water as well, and I'm closer to the water plant than you are, so it's a common thing.
That happens
Yeah.
occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
We never saw it, so I didn't really know what was going on.
Anyone else want to make a public comment? One more time, anybody else? Seeing no hands anywhere at this point. I would also just like to mention that thank you, Robert, for showing up and being here tonight. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, reach out to any of us. Cindy in the building department or Gary, any of us. You have all our emails. Cindy's updated our email list. And you were going to, was there anything on yours? Or is it updated now?
No, it's updated.
Yours updated, so
Yeah,
I think,
there's some issues with my new email address, but apparently Cindy's been kind enough to
yeah,
update
Cindy's.
the contact list, so hopefully you guys all have my correct one.
So please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions, anytime, okay?
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks for making it confusing.
Yeah, could you find a different name? You got 2 Roberts and
least it
3
wasn't a
Chris's
Chris.
now? You go by Bob?
Bob's fine, yeah.
Bob's fine, okay.
Bob.
We might switch your seat because we don't want you necessarily next to that Chris too. We'll see. Just kidding. Any other board comments? Anybody, any board have any comments to make, questions?
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. I would say number 11 is adjournment.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.